I mean, hello everybody. We're our last live podcast for the year, and we'll be back in 225. But I have my co-host Adam Smith fighting a little bit of a cold here. I timed that wrong on the start. I
Oh
apologize,
no, that was my bad.
everybody.
That was
So
absolutely my bad.
yeah, so we thought we'd just have a conversation today more about you, Adam, and what your journey's been. It's you've been gone for a hot minute, and certainly I'm so excited to have you back as a co-host of Drink Up. We have a lot of exciting things coming in 25. I know we traded a text last night about doing a who do we want to talk to, the whole bit. I know you know a lot of people. You know a lot of people in the space as well as I do. So we're looking forward to having various people on to talk about their journey and where they're going. But today's about you a little bit. And so what have you been up to, Adam?
Uh, as always, thank you for having me back. I'm really enjoying these weekend chats and getting to meet cool people.
Yeah.
Um, what have I been up to? Eh, Professionally, kind of kicking things off. Doing consulting over the last couple months. Have a few folks that have very kindly either referred business my way or reached out. And I'll touch briefly on the work itself there, but yeah, I mean, I spent 6.5 or so years with the wonderful folks at BevSource and the lab, and it's funny. I was talking to. I get a kick out of it. It's dumb, but was talking to somebody about resumes the other day, and we were going over mine, and they said you've bounced around a lot in the last decade or so, and I went, no, I haven't. They said, well, BevSource, the lab, BevSource, the lab, BevSource. I'm like, that okay. I see why you would think that. All the same company, right? Um, so did that, and then yeah, spent about a year and some change with a startup. Learned a lot, met some really cool people, some of whom I would love to have on the show, and yeah, like we were talking last night. I mean, I think getting I don't know, a guest's calendar put together so
Yeah,
people
it's
can see
funny. So
it.
I was a little late this morning. I was watching Riverside just change, and you can actually put like a calendar in with Riverside. So that's the technology
Oh, you
that
can
we
do it on
use
the
here.
app.
You can do it in the app. So
Cool.
we can actually schedule that, have it all scheduled and stuff like that. So I know you have a login with me, so we can kind of figure that out together.
Mm-hmm.
This is live, raw, and real, folks. So I mean, it's the whole bit. I wanted to go back. You made a comment about someone said you jumped around a lot this decade.
Sure.
That just like so. First of all, I think it's a good thing to be diversified, and I think it's a good thing to have several jobs. So
Yep.
for that person to say that, it's like, hey, people out there, I'm not advocating for you go quit your job tomorrow. If you're happy, stay there. If you want to have a career, that's great. But it's okay for you to be in a job for 2 years, move to another job 2 years, to move from company to company. Because I got news for you out there. There's no loyalty from that company to you,
Yep.
right? So build your career, build your diversified. And guess what? Companies are looking for people that are diversified. I just read an article. I'm sorry, I won't go deep on this. I'll let you keep
No,
on
go ahead,
talking.
please.
But
Yeah.
I just read this article, and people post all the time. Why is it that companies don't pay their employees that stay with them that are loyal more than the people that they recruit from the outside? So if you want to make more money, go find several jobs and diversify yourself. Sorry, Adam.
No, I completely agree. And it was something. So her and I, it was a very friendly conversation. So it's not like we got into an argument. But I did the same thing. I was like, even if I had bounced around, then I think her point was some of the roles, just because of, and it's a story I can bore people with later, but they were like right at a year or less than a year. And so I think for her, it was more about the bouncing around without, 2 years, some decent chunk of time. Um, but once I explained her, well, it was kind of all under the same umbrella. It was just the same job with, different, different name tags.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes more sense, right? But no, I mean, I completely agree. My having just come home from the holidays, and I'm sure a lot of folks who are listening are in the same boat, right? Like we as the CPG members of our family are sometimes the odd man out. Um, I grew up my dad was an iron worker, stayed with the same local for 30 years, I don't know, somewhere in there. Mom has been with the same company for 12,
which
something
is
like
which is
that.
fantastic. If they're happy and
Mhm. I get
things are
it,
going
sure.
great, that's
Yeah.
fan. That's fantastic. But anyway, it sparked me when that person said that. So I apologize. So
No.
you're let's get back to your journey. So you've been you were running a little brand, a functional brand, I believe, right?
Yep.
In the space, and unfortunately, they ran out of cash. I guess I'm not sure. It's not for me to say what happened, but anyway, you're out on your own now, or in consulting. What's going on?
Yeah, basically just trying to had a few good conversations. Some of them being with you, obviously, Sam.
Yeah.
Had a few good conversations with some folks, and the the general gist, and you get differing schools of thought, but the general gist from everybody that I've talked to who's been doing this a little longer than I have has been lean into, in terms of a primary, right? So the way I've been saying it to folks is, excuse me, if I'm going to be doing the work itself,
Yeah.
that work will be operational, right? It'll be things like, vendor onboardings, forecasting, inventory management, co-packer IDs, blah 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 blah. Right? It'll be operational work because that's what I do. That's what I enjoy doing. It'll be cost of goods efficiencies and things like that. However, given my experiences, because I've seen how the other half lives, for example, in sales and distribution, in marketing and finance, and I've gotten to work with some really cool people. The example I always give is Amazon. Like, I'm not an Amazon expert, but in addition to helping out and handling with some of the ops, I've seen what it takes to get product listed on Amazon, what some of their bill backs or their fees look like. So especially for a startup brand that's going, oh, I feel like I really need to be present on Amazon. I'm not saying you shouldn't. I'm saying you should be very careful about it because you can quickly get upside down. So it's kind of that. It's that 1-2 punch of, hey, these are the things that I can do and that I know absolutely the best, and these are the things that I can give you my feedback on based on what I've experienced, and maybe help point you in the direction of either not doing something right now and waiting, or calling someone like yourself, Sam, someone who has marketing experience, whatever, kind of finding a me in a different bucket, right?
Right.
So that's what I'm doing.
That's awesome. Well, I mean, you were just sharing earlier before we went live. You were talking to a client that's coming out with a brand, and they were putting some things in that brand that weren't FDA approved. So I would think someone at your skill level could actually keep people out of trouble when they start to come with a brand, right? Like, you can tell them, hey, and you can tell them the difference between the type of ingredient that goes in the brand, right? Because one could be different than the other, and I think they were confused a little bit. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, no. And for anybody who's listening, I mean, I love this part of the CPG conversation. Is always fascinating to me. Long story short, there's a lot of functional components that are not. How can I put this? There's a lot of functional components that are not approved for use in a nutritional facts panel beverage. I'm getting a little bit into the weeds here, but for
Yeah.
example, they won't be approved for a nutritional facts panel beverage, but they'll be approved for use in a supplemental facts panel beverage, right?
Ah.
Big picture, and there's a lot more to it, but big picture, nutritional facts panel, think like food at the grocery store, right?
Yeah.
Which is most of the grocery store. Supplemental facts panel, think like the pharmacy section, right?
Ah.
Even not stuff you're getting behind the counter at the pharmacy, but like the sleep aids and things like that, the gummies, I'm trying to think of what else. There's not a lot of RTD over there, but it's things like that, right? So with a lot of these functional brands, because the average consumer, and I'm not speaking ill of anybody, but because they
Yeah.
just don't know to look for that distinction, right? These founders, especially early stage ones, will come and be like, "Oh, I want to put X into my beverage," and I'll say, "Okay, well, great. Which facts panel do you intend to use, or more importantly, where do you want to be shelved in the
And there's
store?"
two different panels. There's the food and there's the pharmacy. But basically,
Kind of, yeah. So it's think supplements like bulksupplements.com, right?
okay.
So, creatine, amino acids, the health and fitness space is full of them, right?
Yeah.
Usually it's a lot of vitamins and stuff. Now, obviously, there are vitamins like vitamin C and vitamin D that are FDA approved, right? But sometimes you get your amino acids, and really, again, there's a lot more to it. But for example, amino acids are a building block of protein. If the beverage you're making has amino acids but doesn't include the protein, well, that's a supplemental addition, right? It's not there naturally. And so that's kind of how I help explain it to folks, is natural versus supplemental. Excuse me. Morally speaking, I have zero issue with most of what I talk to people about.
Yeah.
Right? In the example I just gave, hey, I want a nutritional facts panel, but I want to put this amino acid in it. Awesome. People have been drinking that amino acid in, I'll use like taurine, right? I don't think it's an amino acid.
But L-arginine, taurine,
those things.
there's different amino acids that you can put into your beverage, which will obviously have some effect on your system, but you can't say it, I guess, in your beverage either.
And that's where it gets into structure function claims, and there's a whole angle there. But long story short, that's kind of the preface, right? So long story short, to answer your question, Sam, a lot of brands that I talk to say, hey, I want to do X, Y, and Z. And I go, okay, well, technically speaking, you can't and or shouldn't, right? Per the laws of the FDA as it relates to nutritional facts panels. However, there's a million examples, depending on the product type and the category, of products that have already done that are in the market, that are successful. Yeah. And again, morally speaking, I have no issue, but it is something that the brand needs to understand from like a risk standpoint.
Yeah, you should create, you know what, Adam, you probably already have it, but for your customers, you should create the ingredient, the difference. Like, here's what this space means for food. This is what it means for, pharmacy grade. This is what you're going to get into trouble with the FDA. And here's the ingredients that you need to look at. Something like a kind of a real simple sheet to really make, that person that takes their life savings is like, I just retired from IBM and I want to come out with a functional beverage. So I'm going to put $5 million into this thing. I have no idea what I'm doing, but you could probably help those folks before they get themselves into jeopardy.
Yeah, that's interesting. I want to say, and I'll shout out to my BevSource folks. I want to say they put a very general one together of like not a list of the individual components, which would be useful. It'd be time consuming, but I want to say they've got a link somewhere, and maybe if one of them hears it, they can share it. But they had a link with just, general, kind of as I rambled through it, nutritional versus supplemental, and why you'd want to do one versus the other. But yeah, I mean, it's a good call, and that's something that, especially in the functional space, a lot of brands struggle with. And the comment I always make is, early days, I mean, first 2 years, chances are nobody's going to care.
Yeah.
Right? You're not going to be in a ton of stores. Nobody's going to really bother you over it. But the caution I always give is, once you start taking market share from someone else who's established in that space, they're going to come ready to fight. And if you're dialed in, right, you open yourself up to risk. So, yeah,
that's interesting, right? Because when you first start, no one's going to care. It's funny. I do some work with a company called Wendy, and they have a little brand. I'll remain nameless, but they've been around for 10 years, and they've built their brand, through events and the whole bit. And they've done really well, and they actually they make vats of this stuff. And they sell at the event. They did come out with some a glass. They're going to go to can eventually, a little bit, but someone's come out with their name on it now. So now they're going down the whole path of, wait a minute, you can't use my name because I already have it trademarked and the whole bit. But yes, an interesting space. But you do more than just that. Obviously, you're an operational expert as well, right? So you're very diverse in terms of what you do. So, like, I'm a new brand and I come to you, we've talked about this in the past on the past podcast, I believe, but just in simple, just like real layman terms, I'm getting ready to start. What is the steps, like step 1, 2, 3, and 4 that I have to go through to get my brand from start to actually coming off the line? So
sure. Oh, that's so funny. You're probably the 5th person to ask me this question in almost as many weeks. And I'll gladly give you an answer. I have to preface it with, again, for anybody that's listening that's gone through this themselves or is about to, I mean, please comment, chime in, send us your feedback, right? But
call Adam Smith. We'll put his contact information in here. Give him a call because he can help you before you start the process. Like, have a conversation.
Well, and I think that's exactly it, right? So before you start actually doing things, right? And every brand owner is a little bit different, right? So in my mind, 4 to 6 months of like homework would be really healthy for a lot of brand owners, because I think a lot of people, not all, and I'm not even disparaging the ones that do, but I think a lot of people run headlong into, I'm going to create a formula, I'm going to do this, I'm going to go get investors, blah blah blah, and they just start do. They're checking boxes, and inevitably, and I've seen it happen again, not with everybody, but with several, where they find themselves either immediately or very soon after in a conversation with somebody where someone goes, "Well, hey, what about this?" And the brand owner goes, "Well, I've never even heard those words. I haven't even considered it." Right. So, in terms of kind of the steps, big picture, I think for me, it's always starting with, again, the homework of, what does your product need to cost both to the consumer and to you? Do you have healthy margins built? And this is all kind of happening at once, hence the homework
Yeah.
phraseology, right? So, your pricing and your margins, who's your target customer? What markets do you want to start in? Why? Are those, if you're looking to reach retirees with a high level of income, Austin, Texas may not be the case as much as Southern Florida, right?
Right.
Maybe it will. I don't know, but that's homework that should be done. Fine tuning, and again, this is all before you even really get going. Fine tuning what you're going to say yes and no to for the first 2 years,
Yeah.
right?
It doesn't like the because I just went to BevNet on a weekend, and I met all these like packaging companies, people that make lids, cans, formulation. Your old employer was there. I mean, the, I guess you have to know who your target market is, who you're going after, and like, okay, if they're priced at $1.99 a can or $5 a can, whatever, then you got to almost like back into it. Okay, so in order for me to get to $5.99, I got to go find a can that costs X. Hell, and then I got minimums that I got to make, right? So it's like, yeah. And someone told me the other day, like, yeah, I can make one can, but it's going to cost you $19 a can versus 19 cents. So, in terms of the volume play, but you're absolutely right. So you got to figure out your market. What's the second thing you have to do? So you know your market, you know your clients. What's the second thing you need to do?
So I mean, there's more to that list, but let's say you know your market, you know your clients, you know what your product needs to be made for. You've got all that figured out. Then is when I suggest people call, based on my experience, I love a flavor house, right? I got nothing against them. I think they do good work. Some people prefer to work with, I'll call it a standalone formulator. I know a few folks in that space. They're all good people. They do good work, right? Um, the only reason I say I prefer a flavor house is just because to your point, Sam, right?
Yeah.
And this is where things all kind of happen at once. So it gets difficult to keep people kind of step one, step two.
Yeah.
But you work with a flavor house, generally speaking, not always, because they helped you develop the formula, because the goal is that you buy from them. They're going to offer you, it might be some free flavors or some free functional ingredients to use at a pilot, right? Or they might offer you a lower MOQ to start, which is going to save you money out of the gates. Now,
Yeah.
that's not to mean that they wouldn't offer that otherwise, but if you work with an outside formulator, that flavor house doesn't know you from Adam. They haven't built a relationship with you,
Yeah.
right? So kind of next steps, whether flavor
Is
house or
the flavor
formulator.
house the same as the ingredients? Because I was talking to some ingredient people as well as flavor house people. They're two different things, right?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Absolutely, they are. And some, I mean, it's rare. You will see some ingredient vendors, ingredient providers willing to do some like benchtop or formula development work, but it's
Right.
typically pretty few and far between because they're just not built out for it, right? They don't have the staff, they don't have the equipment. And then from there, I mean, it's funny. I was putting together Gantt charts the other day, just for myself, just to have a clear picture so I could send it to folks. But the from there, it's kind of, again, everything happens all at once. So you get your formula put together, then you've got to get into vendor onboarding, you've got to get into finalizing artwork, you should have it reviewed by an attorney. um, where are you sourcing your materials from? Is that vendor a right fit for you? MOQ, pricing, timeline, communication, right?
Wow.
um, and then it just kind of, the world starts to unravel, right? It starts to just roll in all these different directions.
Yeah.
the caution I always make to folks, and the reason I say it that way is kind of homework first, then these very base level op steps. Is everybody, not everybody. A lot of times, new brand owners, and I'm speaking in your world here, Sam, but they'll feel like, oh, once I'm on shelf, like I hit pay dirt, right? Like I'm good. That's the win. It very much is not. Like the race just started when you get on the shelf,
Right.
right?
Right. Yeah. I
Um,
pushed you on the shelf, but where's the pool?
right. And so, and that's just it.
Yeah.
It's been something for me over the years. I mean, if you asked me 15 years ago, you're a brand, you get product on the shelf, I would have said the same thing, right? But you ask me now, I'm like, oh yeah, that retailer, that distributor, they might help in certain ways, but it's on you as the brand to make sure customers are going in and buying that. No one else is doing it for you,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And the reason I always bring that up to folks is everybody always thinks once they get formulations done and a co-packer found and materials sourced and they get product on shelf, there's this feeling that they're going to have all this time because they've done all this legwork and got everything going. Right?
It's funny. You just something dawned on me. So I invested in this company, a cybersecurity company. It's this. I promise this will relate.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
And generals on the staff. I think they had like an ex-congressman or former congressman, the whole bit on the staff, and they did all the work. They developed a little device that actually could track like all the stuff coming into your like home, and they wanted to actually sell it at retail, whatever. So, but they did all the investment on the startup, the product, innovating, continuing to get everything ready to go. But so they thought, well, once I have it, then the people will come. Guess what? They didn't invest in the sales side of it. And I'm seeing this in the beverage business, by the way. They'll call my friend Alicia Vargo or my friends down at Green Glass Global or you. And we were talking about this morning. And they'll tell them, hey, look, I want your help to help me sell, but I don't want to take any risks. I'm not going to pay you until you get something for me. And I just laugh because the single most important thing after all that work, yes, a big investment, probably $500,000, $1 million, a couple $1 million to just get you off the line. But then they don't want to pay the people that are actually going to drive revenue.
Yep.
They put all the risk on those people. And it's a miss, folks. If you're listening to me, contact Adam and pay him. Pay him to help you. Contact Alicia Vargo. Pay her to help you.
Well,
because it's money we're spent. Because if you don't have revenue coming in the door, all that millions of dollars you invested to get it on the floor, pushed into the store, it's not going to move.
Yeah, I mean, I'll chime in and say, call Alicia, call me, but also call Sam and call people that know what they're doing in the sales world. I was talking to, there's two people I'll mention, and if they're listening, hi. So Lauren Bertrand and I used to work together years ago at the lab, and she's moved on into kind of territory sales, brand activation, that kind of stuff. Not that she hadn't done it before, but she sort of moved back into that space after the lab. And then I'm forgetting his last name. There's a gentleman named Miguel that I talked to. He's based out of California, who owns a studio marketing agency. And we had a really good conversation. And he was the first marketer I've ever heard say, in the first 2 years of a brand, you do not need to be hiring a full-time marketing person. You do not need to be spending an arm and a leg on marketing, right? Like you need to be in the market, getting samplings done, getting tastings done. I mean, pressing the flesh, shaking hands with people, introducing yourself. You don't need this massive marketing budget.
Yeah, it was funny. Dave just came in, my friend Dave from Sonoma. So you'll meet him eventually because he's going to come on here. Hopefully, Dave, confirm you're going to join us on Drink Up one of these Saturdays. But he said, so true. It starts when the placement is made, right? And now you're talking about that, right?
Uh-huh.
Like being in the market, doing those tastings. The work starts now. And so too often, founders sit in their office going, hey, what's going on? You need to be in the marketplace. The consumer wants to talk to you. They want to know your story, right?
Yeah. So Steve Canlin, who worked with me at my last gig, he posted something recently about, if he had all the investment, he was setting up kind of his dream team. The point of the post was like, he would hire a couple people full time, and then he would hire the rest fractional, right? Just like we're talking about. And that was it was, You probably need an operator, someone to do, to keep production running, because you as the owner should be out in the market glad handing people and introducing yourself. You're the one people want to hear the story from. And then you should have a salesperson or somebody who can do, territory management, go run out, drop samples off, all those things, right?
Yeah.
Excuse me, be very grassroots to start. And then everything else, your finance, your marketing, um, all your
Well, you can
branding.
do that. I hate to use the word fractional, but actually, the gentleman we had on last week, Agent Red,
Uh-huh.
and he talked about what he's creating is the venture studio. So literally, there can be a venture studio where you can get those finance people, operations
Mhm.
people, all that stuff to help you scale and build your business. Because obviously, if you're in the testing phase and building phase, you have to get through that. But you can tap into like a venture studio, like what
Right,
Agent Red has.
right.
Jason, if you're out there, just calling you out. But that's a resource for you. And meanwhile, you can contact someone like you to do the operational side so that you can be in the market. But what I'm seeing is these people invest their life savings to get the product on the shelf, but that's
Uh-huh.
when the work begins.
Uh-huh.
Like Dave just said, the work starts when the placement is made. That
Mhm.
is the most powerful statement that I've heard today. Dave, you need to put that on social media, by the way, and talk about it. I'm looking for that post this afternoon. But anyway, I'm being animated, but
No,
purposely.
it's spot on. A, it's true just in general, but B, and this is what I encourage people to think about on both sides, right? So both on the brand side and
Yeah,
on the vendor side, any
yeah,
vendor, any partner that's not the brand that's helping the brand. And it's part of the reason why I want to do consulting. It's why I like knowing folks like you. The For me anyway, gone are the days of I will have a conversation with you and I will help you out with ops, but just ops, and I don't want to look or touch or talk about anything else, right? Because if I'm a vendor, if I'm a partner to somebody, and I truly mean that in the proper sense of the word, right? I have to know, as somebody who's been in the industry, that if I let that brand get to market without having had all the conversations and the information they should, when they get to market, they're going to be dealing with bill backs, with freight issues, with free fills, with trade spend, with blah 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 blah
yeah.
blah blah.
Well, it's funny you
All the
said
stuff,
that too,
right?
because talk. Brand owners just don't even understand distribution and
Right.
what's expected going into that conversation. They're like, "Well, yeah, well, if the distributor takes me on, then the rest is gravy." No, it doesn't work like that, man. The
No.
clock starts ticking once it hits their floor, and if it doesn't move off their floor in 90 days, they start to look at it. At 180 days, it's in jeopardy, and at 365, if there's no movement, it's gone.
Yeah. Yep.
So you're right. You can't. The
Totally.
gone are the days that you can't just talk to them about operations. Is your point? You got to
Mhm.
talk to them about all the other things in between there, right?
Well, if I want to get any vendor, myself, you, any vendor, and
Yeah,
this is one of the few soapboxes I'll get on is if anybody wants to get mind share from a brand owner, meaning actually get them to focus on what this vendor needs them to focus on, so that a PO can be
yeah,
placed, so that problem can be solved. You have to go the extra mile and have that conversation, because otherwise, that brand owner is just going to sit and spin on everything we just mentioned, and they're not going to communicate. They're not going to answer their phone, not because they're trying to be a bad person, but just they're doing too many things at once,
yeah.
right? So yeah, I mean, that's anyway, that's my soapbox, but yeah,
That's
it
great.
happens all the time. So
Well, so you're on this journey. Where do you see things for 25 for Adam Smith? Like, what is like? So what's your destination for 25?
uh, that's a great question, and it's not something anyone's quite asked yet in this way. Um, I mean, as we come up on New Year's, it's good that I have an answer to it.
Yeah,
Really, for this year, if I can get, and I'm close, we're already moving and shaking, right? Obviously, we've talked about some things, but I don't want to be one of these guys that's got 15 to 20 clients and is trying to juggle too many things at once. I want 3 to 5 solid folks, and then I'm always going to be willing to answer the phone and help people out here and there as needed. But yeah, I think 3 to 5 consistent, kind of month in, month out clients, if you want to use that word, or partners, right?
yeah,
And then, I got a wife in grad school. I got family I want to go see. So as long as my bills are getting paid, if that's, you know,
Do you still have the RV?
no, we sold that.
You did sell the RV. I was like, man, I gotta, because I remember you offered me. It's been a couple of years, I think. And you're like,
2
yeah, you
years.
can rent my RV. You can rent my RV. So you got out of the RV business. That could be a side hustle, man.
Well, so that was the thing is, yeah. So we had a camper van. Yep. So we had
Yeah,
a camper van for 2 3 years, and it was fun. We took it on some trips ourselves. We had a bunch of people rent it, but when so I was starting with my last company, and I knew that was going to take up a lot of my time. And then my wife was starting grad school, and I went, well, neither one of us is really going to want to go rehab that RV, that camper van when people come back.
yeah,
So I think we should probably just get rid of it. And we actually, if you're local to the Twin Cities, Kramarczek, the Polish
yeah.
deli,
Okay.
one of the daughters of that family, is who bought it, and so it's really good. You know, she offered to bring us some sausages,
Oh,
right?
that's
Uh, so yeah, it was. It ended up being a really positive experience, and I'm glad we did it. But yeah,
wow.
it's
Well, it
been
sounds like you have a wonderful destination in play. Get those 3 to 4 clients, and I agree. As a very dear friend of mine, she always says you only need a handful of clients.
yeah,
And you know nothing more than that, and long term. And she's someone that when she has a client, she's had them for years. Like she's looking for a long
yeah,
term, relationship. As they grow, she grows with them. And I know you can do the same thing. I would love, because I obviously publish this as a podcast too. I'd love to have your information shared with me that we can share with everybody out there too, Adam. That obviously they know how to find you every week, because we are here every week at 9:30 a.m. Central Standard Time, rain or shine. We'll be here. Let's so I'm so happy for you being here. I'm so happy what your journey is being. I'm going to go on the journey with you in 25,
okay.
obviously, and we'll share more on that. But what does 25 look for you for Drink Up? What do you like? We were talking a little bit. What are you thinking we can do for everybody here just to transition to that? What does it look like to you?
That's a fun question. Uh, Really, maybe it's what we've been talking about. Like I want to have guests on or have conversations around um, just the day to day stuff that people don't, or at least I shouldn't say people because I'm generalizing, but that I have been unable to find folks talking about as in depth as I would like them to, right?
Yeah,
So, for example, we mentioned Lauren already and trade spend and being in store. It's funny. There's actually another Lauren, same name, different last name, but that works in a similar space. I would love to have her on, just because that's something where, again, right? Like I know, speaking for myself, generally what it looks like and what brand owners need to consider. But in terms of, you know, oh, we talked to this store manager and they're having this issue. How do you address that, right? Like those are the types of things that I find fascinating, and I think brand owners would too. You know, in addition to that, Amazon, right? Getting an e-com expert on, just because for me, I've tried to run the math. Amazon's got a little calculator online, right? Um, I still don't see how an RTD beverage brand, just based on the weight of the shipment, the cost to get it to Amazon, the fees,
yeah,
all that. I don't see how folks can be profitable from start on Amazon if they're starting immediately when the brand starts, right?
yeah.
Uh, so I'd love to have somebody on who can walk us through that story, and if there is a way to thread that needle, what does that look like, right? Um, and then obviously the folks that we've had on already who are doing beverage, but they're also doing 6 other things, and I will nerd out on ops all day long, but that's really what I'd like to dive into this year, just because I think it's something that I want to know more about. I think a lot of brand owners, to what we've been talking about, right? Like that's where the work starts. And so it's like, okay, your job is to go out and sell. Most people, right? I would include myself in
Yeah,
that, are not natural born salespeople. They're not natural storytellers, right? You can learn
yeah,
it,
right.
but how do you as the brand owner build that out before you're on shelf going, oh shit, I can't tell a story,
Yeah,
right?
I would love to have more founders on here. Like one that
Totally.
comes to
That's a
mind,
good
and
point.
maybe she'll see this. But Danielle Goss, I love her to death.
Oh
She's
yeah.
just she's an awesome person. Actually, I just sent her kind of congratulate. They're going down to Miami, I guess, and they're gonna, she seems to be blowing up and doing really well, which I'm so happy for Cool Mox. But I'd love to have her come on because she shared with me, a little bit about her journey and how she began, and then also other founders. I think it was Adam over at Carbless actually, connected with her. And these founders, almost creating this community of founders sharing and learning and what they're doing, right? And you're all welcome to come here. Reach out for Adam or myself. We'd love to have you come on and tell the story because it seems like the community is willing to share and learn with one another in terms of keeping them out of jeopardy, right? Because nothing better than to connect with someone that's already been through it and said, hey, look, these are the mistakes I made. You don't have to make the same mistakes I made. So I'd love to see more of that. And then to your point, people like, we had Eric Meth on from Surfside, he's kind of this e-commerce person. I think it was before you came back, but I'd love to have Eric back to talk about, those things. And I have another friend, Eric Martindale, if he's out there, but Eric is in that space as well. Or, I don't know if you've heard of him, but a guy named Jay Williams. I found him on LinkedIn, and he has this product called Freebird, right? And Jay does a daily post every day, and he just talks about, I believe, what's on his mind. But he's going this Freebird. It's I believe the water source is out of Stone Mountain. Jay, if I get it wrong, please let me know. But and then Dave, who's been joining us every weekend out of rainy Sonoma. I want to have Dave on because Dave's come out with a book. I'd love to have him come on our place, our drink up to talk about his book, but also more importantly, he's getting ready to do something in the wine industry. So Dave, I'm not sure what I can say or not say here, but he's an expert. So that's kind of what I see 25 is just to kind of, share and, get these people talking, everybody, right? And, you and I can talk all day long. We could certainly have those weeks where we don't have a guest. We can do that.
Yeah. I mean, and excuse me. It's funny, Dave, I love that you've already given us the green light. It's fantastic. It's funny you mentioned Adam and Danielle. I almost texted Danielle the other day because sitting here, I'm watching football. I think one of the few times that I've got like cable on or regular television, and there was a commercial. It was for like Federated Credit Union or some bank, some insurance company, whatever. And
Right.
you're watching football, you kind of tune that stuff out. And I happened to be walking through the living room while the commercial was on, and I hope I'm not giving away, secret information here, Danielle. But they had just the briefest, like 2 seconds. They showed Danielle next to a pallet of product of Cool Mox in a warehouse. So they had like a slideshow going of clients of this particular business, and I thought, man, she must be doing real well if they're willing to put a beverage brand as like, here's our clients, because it assumes people know who it is. It's doing successful. People like it, right? Like that was super cool. And then Adam, I would love to get him on because his posts, and I think it's a wonderful like mini lesson for brand owners. Carbless just got into Chicago, right?
Yeah.
The Chicagoland proper area.
Yeah.
But his caption on those posts about getting into Chicago it's basically, and I forget how long it's been, but it's basically like, hey, we've been around for X number of years. Chicago's our first big market, right?
Well,
and I think that's really insightful because so many brands are like, oh, I want to start in Chicago. I want to start in New York. I want to start in here. Well, here's a brand that, I mean, all signs point to they're killing it. They're growing. They have more SKUs. Their team's expanding. Adam's always posting about, bonuses that his team's getting.
Oh yeah, I love the big checks he brings out. Hey, if Adam, if you for some reason are listening to Drink Up, we'd love to have you. Let me know. Let Adam know. We want to have you on. So, but
I mean, I think Dave, to your point, I agree with you on Bevalk, and I don't mean to completely derail us, but I do have to.
No. I'm glad you brought it up because Dave, you got to come on and be like a triple co-host here, brother. So next weekend you're on. Good. Answer his question. Read what he asked, by the way. I don't know if anybody can see what he asked.
Oh, sure. So Dave said 2025 is going to be a challenging year for Bevalk, especially for wine. It would be interesting to hear brands' plans for 2025. It's going to be a dynamic year. Couldn't agree more. I think obviously it's not a rabbit hole I'll force us down, but there's the cannabis space and that angle on things. There's the non-alc movement growing, as we just mentioned with Coolmox. But then you have, and I was telling my family in Reno this because the brother-in-law I have out there is second generation Irish. The whole Guinness story blows my mind. Are you up to speed on this?
Well, about the NA products?
No. Like, oh, here, I'll see if I can find it as we're talking. Basically, there was, I think Kim Kardashian, this is going to age me or make me sound old. So I think Kim Kardashian and a couple other celebrities posted videos of them at like Irish pub. Yeah. Manufacturer Diageo has limited the amount of the Irish stout that pubs can buy in the run up to Christmas after, quote, exceptional demand over recent weeks. Just absurd. Like, good for them. I like Guinness, right?
Yeah.
But that's just absurd to me that, we're in this era of younger people aren't drinking as much. Mocktails and non-alcs are kind of, growing, which is great, right? I love that movement too. But then you hear that there's exceptional demand for Guinness of all things, right?
Well,
So,
I think so. What Dave's asking is especially for the wine business, because it's a topic I'm probably posting back and forth for my friend Courtney and Priscilla. If you guys are out there, gals, we talk about the wine industry. There's a lot of people. I'm not saying that people completely walk away from wine, but wine talks about itself. What I'd like to see, Dave, in the wine industry is that people start talking to the consumer, right? What does the consumer want? It seems like we're always, I've been in the industry forever, but we're always talking to ourselves. I have the wine score of this, and I'm a som of that, and this comes from this single vineyard. Obviously there's consumers that want that, but I think we're missing an opportunity to talk to some other consumers in there. So I think there'll be a breakout year for wine in 25, as an example. Someone's going to do something different. Think about Agent Red and what he's doing in terms of how he's actually selling wine. I think he's when he started his day, I think by the first hour he did $25,000, and he did that mystery wine. People are buying like mystery wine. Dave, I think you caught that episode too. I'll have to introduce you to Agent Red. But my point is we got to think different. I think you're going to see people thinking differently, because if you don't think differently, if you don't innovate, you're not going to make it to first base.
Totally. No, I mean, it reminds me of it. I'm blanking on the name. Agent Red was one of them, but there was another gentleman we were talking to.
Greg Needham?
Yeah, maybe it was Greg. The last few months have been a blur for everybody, but I'm having a real hard time remembering stuff.
Yeah.
But it was the conversation around, and maybe this will help you remember exactly what it was. It was a conversation around, consumers don't want to be advertised to directly, right? They want, oh, my athlete that I follow uses this for these things or whatever, right? Like they want it to have a fuller story, to be a part of their community or whatever, right? Which has always been true to some extent, but I think from what I've seen and what people have told me, like the success in advertising has started moving further and further toward that. And so for wine, like speaking for myself, I completely agree with you in terms of the wine industry is always marketed to wine enthusiasts and not to the general man, right? Whereas you think about like functional beverages or seltzers or whatever, like there's always a story being told of like, this is the moment to enjoy this beverage, right? This is how, who you're with, this is where you are. Whereas I don't know that I've really ever seen that for wine. You know what I mean? Like obviously you go to a nice restaurant, you have some wine, right? You invite people over for a big meal. Excuse me.
Yeah.
You have some wine, right? But in terms of social media, other than like some of the canned wines that have come out recently, I mean, I agree with you. I haven't really seen a story be told around wine other than, hey, this is a really good wine, right?
Dave just came in with another response. He goes, I worked with a wine brand whose number one market was South Carolina, not California or New York or Florida. You never know where your brand will resonate. It just so happened that the owner liked to fly fish outside of Charleston, which has a vibrant food and wine scene. he bundled his fishing trips with making sales calls. Like,
I mean,
that is so brilliant. It's like
yeah,
everybody's like, I've got to be in New York, I got to be in Texas, I got to be in Illinois and California, and this person built a marketplace. Oftentimes, like take Texas for instance. Always like I spend a lot of time in Texas, and we always like want to be in Austin, Dallas. But there's other markets within Texas. Texas is 35 million people. And the distributor's like, hey, you know what? Y'all want to be here, but if you go over here, you can probably build a nice business.
totally. I mean, I think about that. I think about that in terms of the like the broader flavor space. Oh, did I lose you? There we go.
Yeah.
So I think about that in terms of, I mean, I agree as far as wine goes, it's brilliant. But in terms of even like, we've had conversations with flavor houses before because they don't deep dive this information a ton, but every now and again they'll pull a report, they'll kind of run through it for brand owners. But certain parts, even within the U.S., right, certain parts of the country enjoy A flavor profile as opposed to B,
right?
Which again is just one of those things. Whereas going back to what we've been talking about as a new brand owner, it's like, oh well, I want to have this beverage and I want to sell it here. Okay, if you're married to that location, probably have this type of flavor available there because that sells really well for those people. That just fits their palate, right?
So interesting is you make your offerings based on the market, what the market wants in that particular location, if you can afford to do that. It's interesting. I saw something. I'm trying to think. What did you ever follow Gary Vaynerchuk?
Oh yeah.
He did a post yesterday, and I can't. It's something about like social selling. And it was a really quick message, and it was really good. And everybody talks about. I know Eric Martindale talks about this, like Amazon, Walmart, Costco, the big beast. But how I read Gary's note, and this is something to think about the wine business, Dave. How I read Gary's note was, he said, my dad owns. I guess his dad owns a little wine shop. Okay, so he grew up in the wine industry. Believe it or not, this guy's like been part of every collab. Great job, Gary Vaynerchuk. I don't know if I ever meet you, but if I do, great. But he talked about, I think it was social selling, but basically he said, if you're a store owner, an independent retailer, you need to listen to my message. So essentially what he was saying, and I'm probably getting the wrong term, but you literally could come on social media today, live like you and I are, and you could start to talk about your products right now. So do you remember, you ever seen the movie Joy, Joy? And it's about the lady that invented the mop. It was like a mop that could actually, you could take it off and it could go in the washing machine.
No,
and she
but now
tried everything else. It ended up being $3 billion, right? But she sold it through QVC and Home Shopping Network. Sure. Fast forward, she has over 100 patents now. Her name's Joy. Right. But now what Gary was saying is, when QVC and Home Shopping Network exists, people would dial in, right? They'd get on their phone. Hey, I'll take that. And then they would have the clock ticking. I sold 50,000, 100,000.
Right.
Well, you could do this right now live on TikTok, on Amazon, use Riverside, and you could actually put a button in. Hey, I'm going to talk about, I'm Sam's Fine Wine, or down the street, or Dave, talk about your wine or your book, go live and actually have people order it right there. And by the way, you don't have to be Walmart or Costco to do it. That was his message, is you can be the independent person down the street, create your own audience and community. And it goes back to what you just said about South Carolina. Like, you can have your community that buys your products. Maybe look it up and see I think it was called social selling is a thing, but as a retailer or operator, you can do this live every week or every day, and every time talk about your products that you sell or the solutions you bring your people. That could be game changing for the wine industry, Dave.
Yeah, I mean, again,
or any beverage.
If you're not tired of it yet, Dave, I think we're going to continue to plug you being in a soon, upcoming episode. So if I might be getting this wrong, but I'm pretty sure Gary started. So his father's wine shop, he started on YouTube back when YouTube had like 7 videos on it, right? And he would literally do exactly that, right? He would get on YouTube and he'd say, okay, well, today's wine, blah, 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 right? And at the time, nobody was really doing anything like that. And so obviously it grew, and he's now who he is, right? And good on him. But and I mean, you and I, Sam, have talked about it offline. Like it goes back to the whole storytelling thing, right? Like I think we'll see what happens legally, but TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, Threads, Facebook, whatever it is, like whatever your platform is, pick your poison. But I think for any brand that's not taking advantage of telling a story on there and doing it in a way that's very like grassroots or guerrilla marketing, right? Like you don't need, going back to the conversation I had with Miguel, like you don't need a $50,000 a month marketing plan to start.
No. Well, here, I found the post. I'm going to read this to you. If maybe you can bring it up too, if you can find it, but it's, if you're in the retail business in any shape or size, this video is for you. There are significant changes brewing. If you don't consider turning your physical footprint into a studio or live shopping, you aren't paying attention to consumer changes. Send this to the retailer, CMO, or send this to your friend or family who has a retail store. 225 is a massive transition year for retail, and it's time to attack the opportunity versus worry about the vulnerability. And it basically, if I'm pulling it up here,
national chain, please pay attention.
Yeah.
Small shop in Main Street in a small city, please pay attention. Live social shopping is coming, and it's going to accelerate people that have overinvested in classic big box retail. Retail has changed. Get ready.
live social shopping.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, again, going back to whether it's wine or functional beverages, I mean, obviously you split between alc and non-alc. It gets a little bit trickier, but the laws are changing, super quick these days. And I mean, no knock to the distributors of the world, no knock to the retailers, really good people at those places. And this is not a diminishment of what they're doing, but yeah, I mean, if you're a new brand, again, whatever your platform is, right? Like sell it direct. You're not going to have, not with Amazon, not with Shopify, but just sell it direct through TikTok, sell it direct through whatever, ship it from your own warehouse if you can, right? If you've got the legal ramifications to do so. Like you just cut out, God, I don't know, 60% of your 80%, a large number of potentially incurred costs. If you were to go the traditional route, you get into bill backs and storage fees and all that kind of stuff.
Right. Especially a lot of these wine's a little bit more open than obviously spirits, but boy, NA brands, you don't have to go through traditional distribution. There's a path for you. And I don't know how does hemp work? Can you do that? Hemp is held to the same regulations either. You don't have to necessarily, you could actually do more social retailing, as Gary is talking about, social shopping, right? Do this live thing and have the people pitch that, or no? Is that a little bit more regulated?
Well, so this is where I'm a little rusty, right?
Yeah.
I believe, given the farm bill and what am I trying to say? Like hemp derived cannabis, there are certain products that you can get online. Right.
Yeah.
But in terms federally anyway, in terms of, true THC and federally, just most of that being legal, it's very state to state. Right?
Yeah. Got it. Yeah.
So it will, in California's obviously updating laws. That I think that was one of the most recent ones, at least that made major news. But I mean, again, I think that's something where we talk about 2025. I could see legislation changes coming to that, right? The cat's out of the bag. And I don't know that federally we're going to see anything this year, but I can definitely see a lot more states kind of jumping on the bandwagon. And then maybe 2026, 27, we see something change federally. But that's one of those where even if it's a CBD related product, which is typically fine, again, state to state, it varies and I'm a little rusty, but even those, I don't understand how, because the base material, right? The cannabinoid, right? The emulsion, the microencapsulation, whatever you're using is the raw ingredient. It's so damn spendy, right? It's not cheap. And so the more you can do, and obviously there's meat on the bone and people are willing to pay a premium for those products, but the more you can do as a brand owner to sell it direct, even if it's just to folks in the city that you have a warehouse in, right? And that's, another thing that we talk about before we get off the phone here, like, everybody always thinks that if they go in, this is again, I'm putting words in your mouth, Sam, but everybody always thinks if they walk into a distributor and they have a really good product and a really good pitch that it's going to go well. And it might, right? But what nobody stops to realize is they're going to ask you for sales data, they're going to ask you, where has this sold before? And if you don't have an answer, it's a 50-50, probably not even that good on whether or not they're going to take you. But on the flip side, if you walk in with a great product, a good presentation, you know what you're doing, and you can prove that it's been selling consistently for 3 months, even something that short gives you a leg up, right?
Right. Well, it's funny you said that because it's probably another episode we can just talk about distribution
Yeah.
in general. And so many people think I'll hire you to introduce me to the distributor, and once I get the distributor, I don't need you anymore.
Right.
And I'm like, hey, Alicia's going to help you more than just make the introduction to you. She's going to manage the process. To your point, you know, let's look at the movement. Let's look at the incentives. Let's look at what places we're going to target. This is the par levels you have on the floor of the brand. This is what the whatever it may be. Here's the consumer takeaway. The whole bit, but for some reason they think, well, once the distributor has it, then you can just go away. I'm like, I got news for you. That's when the work begins too. And people just don't understand that for some reason. But the people that manage distribution and work with wholesalers are worth their weight in gold. Totally. I'll say it again. They're worth their weight in gold. Dr. Adam does all his stuff, like getting you past the creation of the brand, the formulation, get you to the flavor houses, get you past the production. The stuff kind of rolls off the line. You need to talk to people that understand distribution, right, and understand customers, because Dave made one of the most powerful statements, earlier on. I can't even see it anymore, but it all starts at placement, at the end of the day.
Yeah. No, there was somebody, I forget who, it might have been Eric or Jay or one of the folks we mentioned already, but somebody posted something that might have been Adam Siskin. Anyway, the short version was a similar paraphrasing, and it just said, the fork in the road between brands that will survive and brands that won't is how successful are they at managing distribution, right? And don't get me wrong, obviously there's a lot of forks in several of the roads when you're starting a new brand, but I completely agree. And I think once you get to that point, like, now it has to become, you have to feed the beast. It has to become the perpetual motion device of things have to keep moving. And there's no option otherwise, right? You either figure it out and you find a good plan, you find folks like yourself and Alicia to work with, or you don't, and we know how that goes, right? So,
yeah. Well, look, we'll wrap up, everybody. Thanks for joining us on this Saturday. I wanted to leave something, Dave. Again, Dave, thank you so much for joining us today. If you're going to join us every week, and we're just going to have you on as one of our a triple co-host. But he says to address this, I addressed this in my first book. So I think he talks about social shopping. But my next book will be a deep dive into the supplier-distributor relationship. So it seems like Dave has a lot to say about that. So I'd love to hear from you on that piece. And I would love to have you come in and talk about social selling. Great seeing you too, Dave. Happy holidays to you as well. With that, and Adam, you have any final words of wisdom for the weekend?
Oh God, no. Go enjoy yourself. Relax. If you're listening to this, we're all checking our emails at 2 a.m. every day. Take a couple off and have a good time. I'm mostly telling that to myself, but that's for everybody else too.
That's funny you say that, because I post stuff out on LinkedIn, and I love sharing and getting shared back to. Oftentimes, when I'm posting, I'm talking to myself to remind myself, hey, get engaged with the family, enjoy. And the one thing I do is two things. One is I go for walks with my dogs, and it looks like it's a beautiful day in Minnesota today. Sun's coming out, which is awesome. So I think it's and the temperature is what? It looks like 40 degrees or something, which is crazy.
Oh, that's funny. You'll have to send the sun up your way. To me, it's still overcast here, but if the sun's on its way, I'll take it.
Yeah, so I might be out for a dog walk with at least one of my dogs. But have a beautiful Saturday, everybody.
Absolutely. Thanks, Dave. Take care, guys.
Yeah.